Thank you, thank you. What I'll do is I will continue in that case. So, after completing an engineering degree from the University of Saskatchewan, Josh started his career as a mechanical engineer at the Nutrien Lanigan mine site, leading maintenance and operational improvement projects. Following a 1 year hiatus to travel, he took on a project role with Stantec Consulting, supporting large green and brownfield mine development, engineering and construction projects in Saskatchewan. Building from his practical experience and technical experiences, in 2015, Josh shifted his focus to develop a broader business acumen as a manager in an organizational transformation role at Potash Corp within the newly formed strategic procurement team. Through merger integration as Nutrien, he was appointed Director for Procurement in Potash and is leading the procurement, warehousing, and inventory teams, supporting Nutrien's Potash business unit across 6 operating mine sites. Now, if you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them in the chat or Q&A sections, where we'll select several to answer at the end of the presentation. This webinar will also be available for CAMC certified suppliers. Now, you've probably heard enough from me. I'll let Josh take the wheel from here. Josh, I'm going to be letting you share your screen at this point.
Perfect. Thanks, Roy. Let me click the correct buttons. Begin sharing. Get a thumbs up if you guys can see that. Look in the chat window.
You should be good to go. I can see it.
Perfect. I can't see myself, so I'll just talk at the screen. Good morning, everyone. So I would like to acknowledge before we dig into it here this morning that we are all in treaty territories. For myself, that is Treaty 6 in Saskatoon, across Canada, obviously, which is the traditional homeland of the Métis as well. I thought today I would start by giving you guys a bit of a background briefly, really high level on Nutrien. We are a global integrated ag solutions provider with retail and wholesale locations across North America, South America, Australia, and interests overseas. You can tell by the map here, a lot of green dots. That's our retail locations across North America, South America, and Australia. That's Nutrien Ag Solutions. The blue dots are our nitrogen facilities. The orange being our potash. So that's for myself, my focus area is in Saskatchewan. We have our 6 operating mine sites in Saskatchewan. And then the brown dots are phosphate through the southern US on the East Coast. We do have a strong sustainability strategy. The pyramid at the top there is leading the next wave of innovation and sustainability in agriculture. So it's really helping our farmer customers adopt new technologies and agronomy practices to help feed a growing world. While we do that, it is extremely important to us that we're protecting our planet and minimizing our environmental footprint as best we can and in leading in performance. The piece that we'll talk about a little bit more here today is really be a champion for diversity and inclusion in our agricultural industry. And I'll speak from my perspective, which is in the potash industry in Saskatchewan, which can be a little different in where most of you guys, I believe, are out in Ontario. And obviously it's a different scenario down in the US, but I'll give you my perspective today on what we're doing for diversity and inclusion and how that builds that foundation of sustainability for Nutrien. So a hot topic for everyone, I think, is what's changed, what's happened, what's next with relation to COVID, how has that changed our world? About halfway through the last 6 months, well, 2-3 months ago, I had a conversation with our local supply group, and you know, there was a lot of questions around this as well. And PwC had put out a June report that their comments around the world where when the borders closed and those factories went into lockdowns, our mining companies, and that is our focus, is potash mining for myself, reliant on transient workforces with minimal inventories and low diversification struggled the most. So I can speak to that in a moment here from our perspective and what that looked like. The importance of those mining companies to consider alternative approaches, improved inventory management, and globally diversified or locally sourced and financially viable resources help and develop to build the resilience in our local communities. So for us in our locations, when we look at our nitrogen and phosphate and potash, we do have a lot of local suppliers. Our local supply base and our local communities are extremely important to us and our short and long-term success. So from our side, we didn't see a huge downturn in our suppliers able to support us because we do have a very diverse and predominantly local supply base. Our suppliers were able to pivot with us and be flexible and meet our site protocols for safety and ensuring that we had production through this extremely unprecedented time. The key to that was for us ensuring that we are, or knowing that we are an essential service through mining and agronomy. If we don't have fertilizer to plant the crops, if we don't have the seed and chemical products to ensure healthy crops and healthy farm production, we're going to be all in a really bad state. So very early on, we were classified as essential service. Therefore, our supplier base was able to similarly be acknowledged as essential services to support our operations. As with everyone, we did experience significant constraints to our PPE, masks and hand sanitizer. You know, for myself, beginning to work from home very early in March, my wife was always giving me the gears about, you know, I know more about hand sanitizer and masks than I probably ever wanted to because of all the conversations that we were having with our suppliers and our operations to ensure that we had the PPE required to be safe through those times. We also came up with some, I'd say, innovative solutions through that to ensure that for our communities that we were operating in, we weren't pulling a whole bunch of that PPE off the shelves where people in the community would need to be using it, our nurses and first responders predominantly. And finally, our warehousing and inventory remains a priority for us. The to-do list of optimizing our warehouse and inventory structure was on the list before, and it is going to continue to be on the list after COVID. So for us, really looking at balancing where we're getting our PPE, where we're getting our goods from, and ensuring that we have a very tight supply chain around that. But again, broadly overall, especially in the potash side of the world, we didn't see a major downturn in our ability to produce safely through the COVID crisis. So today I do want to speak to you guys more. I would like to speak to you more around basically what do those procurement needs look like in the natural resource sector. I will touch on a bit of the diversity and inclusion piece of that, but that's a whole nother topic that perhaps we can get to in the future. But I did want to talk around what do we need to look at in the resource sector and what's our focus in procurement. Three simple things. We can short circuit a lot of the next really 20, 30 minutes of this conversation by focusing on three things. It's first and foremost, it's having talented people. We need to have folks that are solutions oriented, creative, and critical thinkers. That is so important for myself, my team, and as leaders in the company and within procurement. We have to have people that have a mindset of creative solutions and partnering and collaboration. With that, we need to have business partners. Those business partners for us in procurement are internal and external. So I am a service delivery model leader to our business units, to potash specifically. I'm going to show you guys basically our org structure here in a moment, and perhaps that'll give a little more light on how we're built and how we're delivering. But I have internal business partners that I need to be able to satisfy, as well as those external business partners, our suppliers and our communities. So for you guys to get some insights on that today, I'll present a bit of a perspective there. And lastly, to be able to make this all work, we need systems and processes. Those systems and processes have to be efficient and they have to have clean data. And as anyone knows, having technology working, and I'm seeing some comments in here that audio is breaking up for some, the technology is a challenge. So that's something that we're continually looking at improving and optimizing. So I want to walk you guys through our priorities that line up with those needs. So for us, the priority is optimizing our talent and systems to create that flexibility and ensuring that we have sustainable value. Gone are the days where procurement comes in, grinds on a dollar, and gets a contract in place and puts on the shelf for somebody else to use. Our focus is very much to create a flexible, creative supply chain, and one where the suppliers are integrated in very collaborative conversations with ourselves and with our business partners internally. That's our operations, maintenance, and project management folks. The sustainable value is just so important, especially in our potash and nitrogen and phosphate business units. The sustainable value component is year-over-year run rate on innovation, total cost to ownership, and partnership. So for us, that really does mean a continued focus on our key suppliers. Those are suppliers who understand our business, they understand our values, they understand how we operate and what's important, and the risks involved if our goals and targets aren't met on safety, quality, schedule, and cost. So with that, we need suppliers that are out there driving innovation and value. Some of that is on direct side of the world, so helping us mitigate potential losses in the market, or looking at downturns and becoming, being able to do some smarter purchases on larger commodities. PPE is a great one right now for us, looking forward into the future over the next several months, trying to find where that next wave of supply and demand constraints is going to be, and making sure that we're set up in the best way possible to get in front of that. For us, especially in potash, driving meaningful, impactful diversity and inclusion. Today, our focus and our strategy has always been to first get into a really solid place with our Saskatchewan partners, our communities, and our Indigenous folks here. We are going to be expanding out a process into the rest of Nutrien, down into the US and across our organization. The focus in other regions that we operate is not necessarily Indigenous. That's women and minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and so on. So what we are doing in Saskatchewan today, we are building to be able to leverage into a model and a framework that we can bring to bear across our operating locations. And finally, on the system side, we have implemented Ariba as our enabling technology for sourcing, standardized governance, data analytics, and supplier metrics. We did implement that through our merger coming up on 3 years ago now. And we've spent the last 3 years optimizing that. And we have a long road to go before it is completely where it needs to be. But it remains a priority for us to refine and optimize that system to make it the best that it possibly can be for our business. So our structure, we are set up in a center-led and site-enabled model. So for those of you familiar with procurement models, this is a hybrid. We are not a center-led, centralized model, nor are we completely decentralized and siloed at the sites. We used to be. We are no longer that way. So this hybrid model has a team of category management folks operating at the center. And those guys and girls, those people lead and support initiatives and processes and supplier relationships, predominantly that span across our business units. So if there's a supplier or a key category that hits nitrogen and phosphate and potash, or 2 out of those 3, then we usually get a category manager involved to help support that supplier relationship and strategy. To support or to be able to actually enable and utilize those supplier relationships that category management develop, we have a site enabling teams in our nitrogen, phosphate, and potash side. So my world is potash. I have a team across our 6 operating sites, as Roy outlined in my bio. That is our focus, and for my focus is in Saskatchewan. That's where our operations are. So with that, we need, between bridging our category management and our nitrogen, phos, and potash business unit operations, we have a center of excellence. And that COE sits at the center and supports us through standardized governance systems and data. So tools, templates, and a consistent approach and optimization initiatives to improve how we go about our day-to-day business. The last two business units on the right-hand side of this slide are our retail indirects and our corporate offices. Those on the retail side, we have a team that supports basically everything outside of the direct seed and chemicals, fertilizer, and leases that go into supporting our retail and our farmers. We go and support everything that supports them, basically. On the corporate side, we have our three main corporate offices in Loveland, Calgary, and Saskatoon, and we have a team that supports those functional teams that operate there. So our priorities roadmap. I'm going to start with the left side, and we're transitioning across to the right. So the intention of our roadmap here is to paint a picture of being able to free up time for our folks to be more thoughtful, more insightful, and add a higher degree of value to our operations and to our business units. That means we need to allow time for a more solutions-oriented conversation with those stakeholders, yourselves, our suppliers. Today and over the last, or historically in mining, we are very technical or tactical and very manual in our processes. Lots of different people touching requisitions, purchase orders, receipts, payments, invoices, changing data, changing price, changing delivery times, expediting. So there's so much that historically was done very, very tactically. Our focus is to move that needle and shift ourselves further to the right here. So the first steps of that is setting up supplier and spend management, having a consistent and aligned approach to our suppliers. It's tailoring key performance metrics, getting visibility on those, and really ensuring that we have a very strong commodity continuity or continuity in our data for our commodities. Those really high volume suppliers and commodity goods that we get day in and day out across all of our business units. It's mission critical for us to get those systemized, automated, and off our plates so that our folks at the sites have time to look at the last three columns here, which is being able to utilize our systems in a better way, optimize those buying channels and life cycle costs with the equipment and services that we do source. It is also enabling our legal team and our risk teams to get visibility with Ariba, to get better visibility and better, again, for them, better conversations in our source to contract. And then for our accounts receiving and accounts payable folks in the procurement to pay. So as we shift into a more of a technology focused and systemized and automated approach, we're reducing the workload and increasing the efficiency of our systems and processes and our service delivery model to our business units and our partners internally and externally with Ariba. So with supplier management and Ariba, we're then able to really look at how do we free up that time for our folks to look, and for myself in our business unit, it is how do we spend our money in OPEX and CAPEX, and how do we bring our suppliers in earlier? How do we have better conversations? How do we leverage the data that we have? And how do we provide opportunities for a better conversation? And specifically in potash, we have our 6 operating mine sites. We spend about 70% of our OPEX and CAPEX with local suppliers, and local to us are those suppliers that have bricks and mortar in Saskatchewan or within about 150 kilometers of one of our operating mine sites. Those local suppliers are so critically important for us. So for our folks at the sites to be able to have time to go and talk with them, have conversations about where opportunities are and how we can engage them in different conversations, and bring our maintenance ops and project folks into those discussions to create value for our communities, for our business. And finally, the last piece is our warehouse and inventory optimization. And I'd mentioned that off the front on our COVID side. that remains a high priority for us. We stock an incredible amount of inventory at our sites, and traditionally we do that because we have to be running. When we need the part, we need to have it at hand immediately. So as our maintenance and reliability practices improve, that means we can reduce inventory on hand, and it means we need better partners and better engagement with those partners in our community and in our supply chain to be able to support a better inventory and warehousing perspective for us. So pretty picture of what that all means. All that said in a different way is we have a market that has new technology, we have a supply chain that's out there, and we have business needs. Our job in procurement is to facilitate a conversation with our operations and project teams and our suppliers in a way that drives change, diversity, innovation, and at the end of the day, that's value. Now, diversity in this context, and I've begun thinking about this differently myself, there is diversity in people, there's diversity in thought, there's diversity in approach, and all of that is change. And it is so critically important for us to be thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it, not just in our interactions with people, but in our interactions with our business, in our strategies, in our processes. So diversity in thought and diversity in approach and in our supply base remains such an important and integral part of what we do on a daily basis, and will only increase our focus on that as we go through, move forward in the future. So I want to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of Ariba. I know some of you will be familiar with Ariba as a sourcing platform, and others may not. So in terms of technology enabling transformation and the importance of that for us, I felt it was beneficial to spend a bit of time talking about that here this morning. So Ariba for us is two main components, which is source to contract, S to C, and procure to pay, P to P. So in the source to contract piece, that is a module that allows us to run RFPs and RFQs consistently, engage our supply base very swiftly, and in a way that it gives us better visibility on what suppliers we're engaging, how they're doing in those evaluations, gives us better data more consistently rather than running through emails. It allows contract management. So when we talked about our stakeholders internally, that's our risk team, that's our legal team, that's our business unit and operations team, to have access to those contracts and understand what's in there, why it's in there, and how do we utilize the suppliers that we do have under contract. And finally, we link those two together with the supplier lifecycle and performance management module. And we're going to be standing that up here in 2021. And that really does bring together focus and priority for us through our sourcing process, through our contract management, through our partnership and engagement process to improve how we're using our suppliers and how we're engaging through that in a lifecycle focus. The other more, I call it back-end and technical piece in terms of practicalities on the data is how do we streamline our procure to pay? And so Ariba allows us through our purchase order or invoicing processes, AR, AP, to have a more consistent approach. If we get the right contracts in place through solid sourcing processes, get punch outs, get catalogs, and get all of that data clean in the right way and enabled in SAP, Ariba, that allows our operations and projects folks to have access to those goods and services in a far more efficient manner. And that drives better compliance to using the suppliers that are under contract and that do have incentives for us to want to use them in a better way. So Ariba for us is that end-to-end source to contract and procure to pay. And it is for us spanning over top of Oracle as our ERP from a legacy Potash Corp perspective, and spanning over top of SAP, which was our ERP from the Agrium side of the world before we merged and became Nutrien here 3 years ago. Diversity and inclusion, I mentioned it before, is critically important to us, and it is a very strong focus for us in the potash side of the world specifically. It looks different in potash than it does across the rest of our business. And again, you're going to hear a lot about potash because that's my focus and what I'm responsible for. We do have an Aboriginal content playbook, and there's a link down the bottom here of this slide. And if you just go to nutrien.com, follow in suppliers and supplier diversity, you'll have access to that playbook. And that's something that we're very proud of as an opportunity for our suppliers and our communities and our people and our stakeholders internally to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's so important for us to have strong, diverse, and inclusive program that we can actually execute on. Right now, there may be some comments and questions around, what our numbers look like, what are those percentages, and all those sorts of KPIs. That's something we're working on right now. So I hope I can head off some questions at the pass on this one. We do have a bunch of those numbers. Right now, it's not something we're going public with, as we are going into 2021 and looking to have a renewed vision and strategy around what some of those metrics may look like. So we are working towards understanding what our impact is in our community, and we've had several different consultants looking at that for us, and again, expect hopefully early next year to be able to have a better conversation about a dollar spent in Saskatchewan and what that ripple effect out in our community looks like, and how our direct employment, our business and entrepreneurship, our subcontracting, and our community investment pillars, and the engagement of our suppliers in those focus and priority areas drives value for everybody in the community in a very, very positive way. So what can you expect from us? You can expect that we're going to continue to seek out and partner with innovative and collaborative companies. We're going to continue to challenge the status quo. We look for mutually beneficial opportunities in our operations, in our supply chain, and that spans across nitrogen, phos, potash, corporate, and retail business unit. It is the gamut. We are not ones to be standing still in procurement. We do like to challenge ourselves and be looking to disrupt ourselves and our supply chain if it makes sense in a positive way, to get in and create value for our business and have better partnerships with those suppliers that are similar and like-minded, to be able to go and get and meet those challenges of the business. Business continues to move and move forward very, very rapidly. We can't be left standing still in procurement, so we need to be challenging ourselves and having better conversations with suppliers that have that mindset to be able to adapt and be flexible and present solutions to the problems that we have at hand the day that we have them. I already spoke to the SAP piece, so getting into that, you guys will see if your suppliers of ours are interested in being a supplier or being asked to be a supplier through 2021. There is an onboarding and enablement piece of Ariba that we're going to be standing up more thoroughly and optimizing in the coming months here. So expect that that's going to be a more consistent message from us as well. And foundationally, our local suppliers and a diverse and inclusive supply base continues to be very important to us. And we are, again, looking at how do we improve our communication, how do we improve our engagement and our focus and our metrics and reporting on those, because we've done a ton of great things with that over the last several years. And I feel like we can do a lot better in focusing on that and actually redoubling those efforts and getting better value for our communities out of that. So what does that mean to our suppliers? It can look a little different. Again, this is where, I was thinking about this presentation and it could go different ways. And I saw some notes on LinkedIn where it's, understanding perhaps what are we buying and, what is our procurement need on a purchasing of goods and services perspective. I decided not to go that route. Instead, I decided that really wanted to give you guys some perspective of where we are in our procurement mindset, what our broad procurement needs are, and what we're looking for on a general perspective for our suppliers. So what does that mean for you guys as we go through this, continue to work through this transformation and innovation in procurement? Broadly, it remains reducing our tactical and piecemeal commodity quotes. So once those data is clean and our systems are stood up in a better way, those emails flying out for a quote on a $50 item are going to be reduced. We're gone. The goal there is to have it systemized and automated so our end users can have the visibility on on that data for those commodity items at their fingertips. That means we can then have a consolidated approach to inventory management. So expect that we're going to have conversations around standardization, a holistic approach across our network, perhaps across Saskatchewan into Alberta, maybe into the US, depending on who you are and what you supply and what our needs are. It could be asks for supplier managed inventory, core and rebuild exchange programs, figuring out better ways of reducing our OPEX spend with those partners that offer those solutions for us. And I spoke to it before, it is improved D&I engagement and strategic alignment and seeing the value and sustainability in those engagements. For other suppliers, it may be an increased connection and collaboration on simply just opportunity development and figuring out better ways of coming to resolution on ideas or opportunities that hit our business on a daily basis. We are a very big organization, and there's a lot of opportunity for efficiency gains. And a lot of the time, our suppliers engage multiple sites, maybe even multiple business units, and see opportunities for us. So we need to be able to have those conversations. In potash, we do, again, a lot of our work is local with local suppliers. We have shutdowns that happen every year at our potash sites, and we broadly do a lot of the same work and buy the same sort of equipment and the same parts and components year over year over year. Each site has a different approach to doing that. So a focus for us is identifying opportunities for perhaps multi-site sequence projects that we're doing the same sort of things in a rolling sequence across multiple sites with the same crews that are already mobilized, up to speed with our safety programs, up to speed with onboarding, up to speed with our expectations to execute that work across the sites. With that, it could also mean early engagement in work scope and project development. The earlier we get construction companies and construction suppliers into our engineering and concept development phases, the better we'll see the execution of those projects. Safety, quality, and schedule and cost are all going to be driven up, except for cost, become more efficient and be better. The sooner that we have that collaboration between different suppliers working together instead of piecemealing out different pieces. Again, that's a massive change management process that needs to be undertaken there to figure out better ways of doing business and identifying those opportunities. Sometimes, there's huge opportunities there, but it's a matter of taking a bite out of that elephant and taking bite-sized pieces and not going towards that huge thing all at once or too quickly. So for us, it is a balance of how do we talk with our ops and projects teams, figure out what they need, and be that liaison into the supply chain and figure out what's out there and what opportunities our suppliers are talking about and be able to bring that into a better conversation as we move forward. So in closing here, really, I want to leave this with you guys. Our mindset in procurement is to continue transforming. It is focusing on opportunities, value creations, and be solutions oriented. It is to create space for our people. It is for our folks in the business units and our suppliers to give breathing room to have better conversations. And when we have those better conversations, we will have value in that, and we will find better ways of doing business, and we'll bring solutions to bear that's going to drive our cost per ton, that's going to drive our stakeholder value and our shareholder value up, because at the end of the day, we have partnered in a better way with our suppliers and with our internal stakeholders to be able to have that impact and sustain the value in the short and long term. So with that, I say thank you very much. Hopefully I covered the high points for you guys, and I'm seeing some comments and questions coming through in the chat. So perhaps Roy, I'll hand it over to you to moderate that, and I'll be happy to talk more with what's on top of mind for folks on this call.
Lovely, thank you very much. So going over first to our Q&A section, and then we'll be looking at our general chat for the questions that were sent in thus far. Our first question comes from an anonymous attendee asking, a lot of the suppliers are small businesses, and does Nutrien have any experiences in developing small suppliers?
Yes. We do. We have the way we're structured with diversity and inclusion priority. One of our structures is called an Aboriginal Opportunity Partnerships, and we have several right now. And our focus there is the one that comes to mind immediately is Saskatoon Tribal Council and with STCI, the STC Industrial business. So that is a small business that we've been working very closely with STC and the leadership of STCI in developing. And that is an approach for us is to be able to have very meaningful conversations with them, ensure that they're engaged consistently across, again, for us, it's in the potash industry, for them to be engaged consistently across our potash sites. We have committed in those partnerships to give an increased level of communication and conversation through the RFP processes. It is very typically a competitive process still for those businesses, but our intention is to build them into a competitive business that can compete in the marketplace. We don't do, typically we don't do carve-outs and hand over chunks of work. Usually it is, actually in all cases, it is a competitive process and a conversation around execution plans. So STCI is one of our Aboriginal Opportunity Partners. In terms of developing small businesses generally, that has not been a direct focus for us in spending the effort in doing that with small businesses across the board. Though, again, in our local supply chain, there is a wide range of businesses and in our local community that we utilize, and they are engaged in our supply chain actively on a daily basis. So hopefully that answers the question.
Go here. I believe it does a little bit, just because it helps us understand what you mean by developing the suppliers. With some suppliers, they are a little bit intimidated or nervous of the fact that there are certain other companies that may help try to develop a supplier with the means of buying that supplier afterwards. That's not what Nutrien does.
No, no, we're not in the business of purchasing our suppliers. We're in the business of making potash, nitrogen, and phosphate and selling it to farmers as fertilizer and crop inputs. So no, we're not in that business.
Okay, lovely to know. So on our next question, I'm actually going to be taking this from our general chat, and it's asking whether or not all of your RFQs, RFIs, and RFPs are listed on Ariba.
I would love to say yes, that everything is in Ariba and we're running all of our RFPs and RFQs through that program. We're not there yet today. And there are thresholds for what we're running through the program. And so short answer is no, not everything is in there. There is still stuff that goes out by email, depending on what it is and what the threshold is and which suppliers we're utilizing. So still a work in progress for that. In terms of listed, I'm going to read between the lines and saying, is it listed on SAP? I'm guessing the question there may be, you know, as a supplier, are you able to go in and see what open RFPs or RFQs are out there and decide what you're going to bid on? For us, that's typically, from what I understand, an approach that government or, you know, in the public sector you would see. For us, ours are closed. So it is a bidding process that we select which suppliers we engage, and we have them directly engaged through the RFP and RFQ process. It's not something that the public or anybody else in Ariba would have access to see that listing of what's out in market today.
Okay. So then that essentially means that because all of the bidding process is closed, once they are registered to the website, if they are the right fit, Nutrien contacts them.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what I see here. Emily, how do we contact the related to get management and opportunity for an RFQ? So yeah, for us, the opportunities there, I think, Roy, I don't know if you have that slide, but I would encourage for the suppliers on this call, there is a contact us on the nutrien.com/suppliers, and there's a link in there that if you guys are not registered or are interested in having a conversation or informing us of your business and what you supply, to put your engagement through that portal, and then we're able to filter and sort and have a conversation as it makes sense for our business.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks, Roy. I see it dropped in the chat there. Perfect.
Right. So Nutrien.com/suppliers is where you can start building that sort of relationship with Nutrien online. Because it's COVID-19, it's always more difficult to build any sort of face-to-face relationship. I know that Nutrien does do events within Saskatchewan, working with some of our partners, like with SIMSA. And you also do work with KMC whenever we had our in-person events as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very important for us. And I guess I can speak to that too. And I see, I'm going to jump in here. I'm just looking at the chat as well. The focus on Saskatchewan and Aboriginal supplier development in Saskatchewan. Can you generally comment on Nutrien's position on using minority-owned businesses and suppliers in other provinces? And this fits into, I think, just to carry on from your comment there, Roy. For us, yeah, that is a focus. Predominantly, it is in Saskatchewan today. Our sustainability team is working on a strategy to roll this out across Alberta and down into the US and the rest of our business units. Again, that's going to look different than what we're doing in Saskatchewan. Our Indigenous engagement and our communities that we operate in Saskatchewan have a different makeup than communities in Alberta, than how we're operating down in the US and the communities down there. So we are trying to figure out what that tailored approach looks like. Though we do know that the foundations that we're setting in Saskatchewan and the approach generally is what we're going to be bringing forward into the US and across Canada. So it is something that we are still looking at and will be implementing.
Lovely. Also, I do want to point out for our certified suppliers here today that we actually do have our corporate members list also available on bedingo.com/KMC. So the website that our suppliers end up using in order to get recertified still is useful after getting that approval, because it does give you the contact information for the designated procurement or supply diversity lead for our corporate members. So that is another way of building that relationship, not just with Nutrien, but with our other corporate members as well.
And we have, actually, I can speak to that too. I just tweaked a thought for me too, Roy. So we've had a shift in our sustainability team and on our D&I coordinator within our procurement team. So at the moment we have Julianne Riston is going to be our interim senior advisor for diversity and inclusion in their supply chain. So for folks who know Milton Grey Eyes, he has moved on to another role outside of Nutrien. Great opportunity for him, and I'm actually really excited for him to get into that role. I think it's going to be an awesome job for him. So really happy to see him move and grow and take on a new challenge and opportunity. In the meantime, we have had Julianne Riston step up and be an interim senior advisor for us as we go through recruiting process here over the next while. So if you guys are used to dealing with Milton in the past, Julianne Riston is going to be the new contact for these kind of conversations too.
Okay, that's actually really good to know. I didn't realize that Milton had moved on to another role.
Yes, sorry, the communications on some of these ones, we do our best, but yeah, we can, things fall through the cracks, so apologies on that.
No, we do understand. It ends up happening, and especially now, it's sometimes difficult to disseminate that information to all of the relevant parties.
Absolutely.
But best of luck to him.
Absolutely, he's going to do great.
So, getting a little bit specific now, we have a question from Amitesh where it says, due to price softening, has it further pushed cutbacks on potash production due to COVID? How have the export numbers of potash panned out up to now to China and India?
Oh, wow.
Did that one throw you off a little bit?
Yeah, well, only that it is outside of what I deal with on a daily basis. So unfortunately, I won't go into the export numbers of China and India, and not because I don't want to. I simply don't have that in front of me, nor is it really my purview to speculate on where that's landing at the moment or what our goals are there. Due to price softening pushing back cutbacks on potash production. I guess broadly, we're seeing, I think, a cautiously optimistic demand increase in potash. So again, from our perspective, through COVID, we've been fairly stable, and we haven't seen, we didn't shut our mines down, excuse me, and we didn't see a big drop in demand because of that. So from our perspective, fairly stable marketplace at the moment for potash.
Okay,
sorry
lovely.
if I didn't get into the detail. Amish, I know you're probably looking for more, but I'm sorry, man, or lady, I won't be able to answer that one in detail.
No problem. It looks like he is happy with the answer, and we can go on to the next question. So you talked about Nutrien's need for PPE during COVID, and I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into detail for needs in, let's say, the IT or staffing realm, if Nutrien has any.
Sorry, in what regard? Like what we're doing with IT and our resourcing, or gaps that we're trying to fill today with technology, or just opening, like can you give me a little more background on that one?
Sure thing. So a lot of our IT suppliers do work in that infrastructure and engineering development. Other IT suppliers end up working more in the staffing realm. I'm wondering if there are any opportunities you see in Nutrien's future regarding those two specific fields.
Okay, so engagement of some of your CAMC membership into opportunities for IT and yeah, not off the top of my head, to be honest. So for us, yeah, again, this is where our engagement on kind of the broader IT perspective and resource, requirements. We do that through RFP process as well. That's serviced through our corporate procurement team. So unfortunately, that's again another one I don't have at my fingertips to be able to give you a solid answer, Roy, on what that would be, other than we do engage the marketplace when we do see a need for that. So yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But in terms of PPE in that case.
Oh, yeah. So for us, the PPE, predominantly our supplier is Fastenal, and that Fastenal spans for us across North America for our wholesale and retail divisions, and being able to support us across the board. So predominantly Fastenal is the supplier that we get our PPE from. Through COVID, and as I mentioned before, there's demand, obviously supply restrictions around the world. So we have been engaging in different conversations, and I actually have had a few smaller businesses and I think a couple of diverse ownership structure businesses reach out to myself and to our MRO team to have some conversations over the last several months, and we have been engaging in those discussions. So whether or not we're buying from them today, I'm not sure, but I know we are ensuring that we have flexibility of what we're getting. I would also asterisk that with a footnote that for us in the potash side and our nitrogen and phosphate facilities, our 3M branded and supplied, I think it's the 8211 and 95 masks, are certified, tested, qualified product that we're able to use in our operations for what we need on specific jobs and specific instances. So that's kind of our core. Then we have surgical masks and other types of face coverings that we're looking at as well. So that's probably the broader perspective outside of the 3M supplied N95. So, and we are again really trying to balance supply and demand and get a forecast. If there's this big push of a second wave coming around the world here over the coming months, we need to make sure for ourselves that we have diversity in supply and making sure that we have a balance there and have access to the PPE that we need when we need it. So expect that we will be reaching out if we've got those contacts already, or if you guys have contacts and have access to some of that PPE, by all means, drop it through the portal and it will get routed to the correct folks to take a look at and engage if and when we need that support and that flexibility.
Okay, so that's always a good thing to note, especially with, like you said, that second wave coming in. It's always good to be prepared and have those goods and products on file and in your inventory. Now, with that said, one quick question is when it comes to those closed RFP processes on Ariba that Nutrien ends up sending out, do you happen to know if it's possible for suppliers to work together on said RFP?
It is. I mean, if we go and issue an RFP to supplier A, generally we always ask for, if there's subcontracting, I guess that's how that would really work. That the supplier A would, if they're engaging supplier B in a partnership or a collaborative effort to put a proposal through to us, make sure that we have a visibility on that. That's an important part for us. We don't like to find out later that supplier A doesn't do anything except engage supplier B, and we don't know that until we've awarded. Let's be transparent and have those conversations early through the evaluation process. But yeah, absolutely, we have that all the time where we have subcontracts happening. So if there's a collaborative effort there that makes sense, and the supplier A believes that that's the best value that they can propose is to engage in some way supplier B and bring them along into that RFP, we'd be happy to evaluate that and take a look at it for sure.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, just because when it comes to some of our smaller suppliers, it is helpful for them to be able to collaborate, not just have a subcontract, but almost have a partnership when it comes to certain RFPs. And because Nutrien is such a large company, that might be something that they would have to consider.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how this gets operationalized for the suppliers listening here today. But yeah, that partnership piece of it, when we go and I put up that slide on our diversity and inclusion and the 4 pillars along the side of direct hire, subcontracting, community engagement, and education. Those aspects, right, of subcontracting is a key piece for us. So especially as a CAMC member, certified supplier, for you guys to have that business development with perhaps the larger suppliers that we do use on a daily basis. And if you're able to facilitate, or have some good conversations with them and link in with them, that is part of our strategy and plan to be able to encourage those kind of conversations and collaborations for sure.
Okay, well, you've disseminated some fantastic information here. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. We do have that 5 minutes left. If there is any quick questions coming in that we can answer now, that is lovely. If not, I will be sharing my screen.
I do see one here, Roy, just from Emily. One more question. PPE in Canada, unfortunately, a website enrolling contractors interesting. ISNet World basically is what it comes to. What it comes down to. An ISNet World for us is a requirement if you're boots on ground at one of our facilities. So if you're a supplier that you will not be at one of our facilities or one of our offices, ISNet World generally can be waived or not a requirement. So again, through these processes, it is part of, if it's a new supplier, that's part of the conversation we need to have with you guys, as well as with our operations to really understand the risks. ISNet World for us is an important tool and system that allows visibility on a broad range of all the WCB insurances, all the safety programs and protocols, and making sure that the standard of care, we'll say, of a supplier when they show up to site is there, and that all of the checks and balances have been accommodated for that we need. So in those instances, yeah, if you're on site, you definitely need ISNet World. If you're not on site, we may have some flexibility there to have a different conversation.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Josh. Let me share my final screen with everyone today. So I would just like to thank Josh once again for presenting to our audience and thank all of our attendees for participating. And before we conclude today, I'd just like to take a moment to talk about some of the upcoming events and opportunities. Our next webinar on November 24th, 2020 will be focused on thriving in the new normal and adapting to a new business strategy. If you'd like a little bit more information on that, you can either contact me at rsingh@camc.ca or my colleague Vandana at vsrinivasan@camc.ca. And you can visit our website, camc.ca, for more info. And when it comes to facing the year like what we've had for 2020, CAMC will just be trying to continue to ensure that we're providing you with the most important information and development and support tools. You can contact me by phone or email, and we can discuss whether or not you have a fit within our network, into our scheduled events, or if you have new ideas for the webinars for 2021. And finally, I'd like to once again thank our webinar sponsors, EY, Flexingate, Magna, Nutrien, Prasad Employment Law, and RBC. With your support, KMC can continue to ensure to bring supplier development to the network by as many means as possible. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Thanks a lot, Roy. Thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate it.